The entire sports landscape stopped and stared because Alex Eala did not arrive at the All-England Club looking like a competitor who was running on empty. She did not walk through those historic gates like someone who had just suffered a bruising defeat less than 48 hours prior. Nor did she carry herself like an athlete desperately crying out for a week of complete isolation and bed rest. Instead, she stepped onto the most sacred lawns in all of tennis with the unmistakable aura of someone who fully belongs at the absolute pinnacle of the sport. Yet underneath the surface, the raw numbers behind her arrival are enough to make any sports scientist shudder. 12 grueling matches played across 22 chaotic days, for consecutive tournaments spanning 3 different cities. An arm heavily wrapped in compression tape, hiding the physical toll of a relentless grass court campaign, and a straight sets loss in Germany just 2 days ago that left critics wondering if she had pushed her young body past the point of no return. But here is the massive narrative that the mainstream global tennis media completely failed to grasp. While the commentators were busy drafting obituaries for her physical endurance, Alex Eala was quietly cementing an unprecedented piece of tennis history. How does a 21-year-old from the Philippines survive a schedule that would break veteran players, arrive at the prestigious grounds of Wimbledon with a taped-up arm, and still see a number printed right next to her name in the official main draw? What drives a competitor to endure that level of self-inflicted punishment? And why on earth is the very opponent who just pushed her to the absolute brink in a championship final now standing directly beside her as her chosen doubles partner? This is not just a story about surviving the opening week of a Grand Slam. This is a masterclass in calculated risk, psychological warfare, and the shattering of a 17-year-old regional curse. This is a definitive untold story of how Alex Eala shocked the tennis world on day 1 of Wimbledon, and why the entire sport is suddenly terrified of what she might do next. To truly understand the absolute shockwave that Alex Eala sent to the tennis community on her first day at Wimbledon, we have to look back at the chaotic, bone-crushing calendar that led her to this moment. The transition from clay to grass is universally recognized as the most jarring and physically demanding stretch in professional tennis. The bounces are low, the rallies are lightning fast, and the constant bending requires an immense amount of lower body strength and pristine footwork. Most top-tier players meticulously ration their appearances during this brief window, often playing 1 or at most 2 warm-up events to protect their joints and save their energy for the main stage in London. Alex Eala threw that traditional playbook completely out the window. Beginning in the very first week of June, she embarked on a relentless multi-city campaign that saw her compete in Birmingham, transition to Berlin, and immediately followed up an exhausting run in Bad Homburg. That is 4 high-stakes professional tournaments back-to-back, with 0 breathing room in between. By the time she arrived at her final tune-up match in Germany, she had logged 12 highly competitive matches in a span of just 22 days. For context, that is nearly 2 full Grand Slam tournaments worth of tennis compressed into a little over 3 weeks. The physical cracking point seemed to arrive just 48 hours before Wimbledon, when Eala stepped onto court in Bad Homburg against Elise Mertens. Mertens is a definition of a seasoned WTA veteran, a former world number 12 in singles, a multiple-time Grand Slam doubles champion, and an owner of 10 career singles titles. She is a player who knows exactly how to exploit even the slightest hint of fatigue in an opponent. During the opening minutes of that match, it looked like Eala's raw adrenaline would carry her through yet another miracle. She came out flying, striking the ball with immense purity, breaking Mertens early, and storming to a promising 3-1 lead in the first set. But then, the invisible wall of physical exhaustion caught up with her all at once. The crisp movement that had defined her month evaporated. The explosive depth on her ground strokes vanished. Mertens, sensing the shift in momentum, locked down the baseline and reeled off 8 straight games without a single response from a young Filipina. The match was over in a flash. A 63 straight sets defeat that lasted a mere 84 minutes. The images flashing across television screens were deeply concerning for tennis fans. Eala's hitting arm was heavily bound in athletic tape. Her shoulders slumped during changeovers, and her reactions were a crucial fraction of a second slower than usual. The fire in her eyes was clearly burning, but the physical engine was completely out of gas. Immediately, the tennis punditry began to second-guess her entire strategy. Prominent analysts openly questioned her coaching staff, publicly declaring that Eala had made a catastrophic scheduling error. They argued that by chasing deep runs and minor warm-up events, she completely compromised her chances at the one tournament that actually mattered. The prevailing consensus was that she would arrive at Wimbledon running on absolute empty, making her prime target for an early, embarrassing exit. And to be completely fair to the critics, their logic was sound. History is filled with young prodigies who burn themselves out in the warm-up weeks, only to suffer a heartbreaking first-round collapse at a Grand Slam. The fears among the Filipino diaspora watching from late-night streams and graveyard shifts around the world were palpable. The collective anxiety was real. Had our superstar pushed herself too far, too fast? But those critics were playing checkers, while Alex Eala and her team were playing high-stakes chess. What the mainstream tennis channels completely failed to explain to the public was the cold, hard mathematical calculation behind this grueling marathon. Eala did not subject her body to 12 matches in 22 days out of reckless enthusiasm. She did it because she understood the immense, transformative power of a Grand Slam seed. In professional tennis, a seeding is the ultimate shield. By pushing her body to the absolute limit, by capturing the title in Birmingham and scoring stunning back-to-back top 10 victories against elite stars like Elena Rybakina and Alina Svitolina in Berlin, Eala accumulated a massive hoard of ranking points at the exact moment the Wimbledon entry lists were being finalized. When the mathematical dust settled, those triumphs propelled her to a historic milestone, seed number 29 at the All-England Club. To the casual sports fan, a seed might just look like an arbitrary number next to a player's name on a television graphic. But within the brutal ecosystem of a Grand Slam tournament, that number changes absolutely everything. A seed is not just an honor. It is a massive structural advantage that reshapes the entire competitive landscape. First and foremost, being seeded means you are legally protected from facing any of the other top 32 players in the world during the earliest stages of the tournament. While unseeded players are thrown into a chaotic, volatile lottery where they could easily draw a world number one like Iga Swiatek or a defending champion in the very first round, a seeded player is guaranteed a path against lower-ranked competitors or qualifiers for the first two rounds. But even more crucially at Wimbledon, earning seed number 29 granted Eala a luxury that money cannot buy: a first-round bye. Think about the profound physical implications of this benefit. While every single unseeded player in the women's draw had to lace up their shoes on day one, step onto the high-pressure courts, and engage in a life-or-death battle to survive, Alex Eala was handed an automatic pass straight into the second round. One bad day, one unexpected slip on the slick grass, or one hot-streaking opponent can send an unseeded player packing before the tournament even properly begins. They have to survive an entire extra layer of physical and emotional trauma just to reach the starting line, where Eala's tournament actually commences. When you view her schedule through that analytical lens, the entire narrative flips completely. The 12 matches in 22 days were not an act of exhaustion. They were a deliberate deposit into a physical bank account. Yes, she arrived in London with a taped arm and a tired body. But because she secured that 29th seed, the tournament structure itself rewarded her with a massive pocket of rest. She traded a routine match in Bad Homburg for a guaranteed pass past the terrifying landmines of round one at Wimbledon. She played too much, she suffered through the pain, and she ended up with more systemic protection than any tennis player from her country had ever received in the history of the sport. That is not an operational blunder. That is a brilliant masterstroke of athletic management. The moment that number 29 was officially printed next to Alexandra Eala's name, history was written in a language that the international tennis media completely ignored. Not a single major Western sports network properly contextualized the magnitude of what this young woman had just achieved for her corner of the globe. To find the last time a tennis player from Southeast Asia stood in a Grand Slam singles main draw with a seed next to their name, you have to spin the clock back a staggering 17 years. You have to travel all the way back to the 2009 Australian Open, when Thailand's legendary tennis icon, Tamarine Tanasugarn, achieved that distinct honor. For nearly 2 decades, an entire generation of incredibly talented athletes from Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines tried with everything they had to break through that glass ceiling. They fought through grueling qualifiers, endured early round heartbreaks, and suffered through the grueling realities of the professional tour. Yet none could quite manage to secure that coveted seeded status at a major. The regional dry spell was a heavy, unspoken burden. It reinforced the deeply flawed narrative that Southeast Asian tennis players lacked the physical stature, the infrastructural backing, or the sustained endurance to consistently rank among the elite 32 players at a Grand Slam event. Tennis Cigar, much like Eala, was a magnificent grass court specialist who unlocked her absolute best tennis on the rapid lawns of the United Kingdom, using flat, precise ground strokes to dismantle more powerful opponents. And now, after 17 years of complete and total regional silence, it is a 21-year-old Filipina who has broken the spell. Alex Eala did not just sneak into the Wimbledon draw through a wild card handout or a stroke of luck from an injury withdrawal. She demanded her place. She forced her way into the history books through sheer competitive will. For every young kid picking up a racket in Manila, Cebu, or Davao, seeing that country designation and that seed number on the official Wimbledon order play is a culture-shifting moment. It proves that the tennis pathways of Southeast Asia are no longer relegated to the periphery of the global stage. The region is back in conversation, and Alex Eala is the one holding the microphone. If you think the seeding calculation and the regional history are the only mind-blowing aspect of the story, wait until you look at the psychological drama that unfolded just weeks prior in Birmingham, England. To understand the sheer depth of Eala's character, we have to look at an astonishing statistical anomaly that had haunted her entire professional career, the Czech curse. Going into the month of June, Alex Eala possessed a deeply painful, highly documented record against players from the Czech Republic. Across her professional journey, she had faced Czech opponents a total of 13 times, and her record stood at an embarrassing, heartbreaking 0 wins and 13 losses. It did not matter the surface, it did not matter the tournament tier, and it did not matter the ranking of the opponent. Every single time she looked across the net and saw a Czech flag, she lost. She fell to Barbara Krejcikova. She was dismantled by Marketa Vondrousova. She was outmaneuvered by Karolina Machova, and she was outpowered by Linda Noskova. The Czech Republic is a global tennis production line, famous for churning out players with pristine technical mechanics, cold-blooded emotional control, and an innate understanding of court geometry. For Eala, this 0-13 record had transformed from a simple statistical quirk into a massive, looming psychological barrier. It was the elephant in the locker room, a narrative that opposing coaches openly noted and weaponized against her. On the 7th of June, Eala fought her way into the championship final of the Birmingham Open. It was a massive opportunity to capture her very first professional grass court title. But when she looked at the official draw sheet, the ghost of her past materialized yet again. Standing between her and the trophy was Nikola Bardunkova, a brilliant 21-year-old Czech, star ranked 69th in the world, seated 5th in the tournament, and armed with all the signature tactical versatility of her compatriots. The match began exactly the way the critics expected. Bardunkova used her smooth, effortless variations to disrupt Eala's rhythm, taking a tight first set 7-5. The momentum was entirely with the Czech player. History was singing its familiar tune. Eala was staring down the barrel of career loss number 14 against the Czech Republic, a defeat that would have inflicted a devastating psychological wound right before Wimbledon. But true champions are defined by how they respond when history is actively trying to crush them. Instead of folding under the weight of the curse, Eala dug her heels into the Birmingham turf. She adjusted her return position, started striking her forehand with increased aggression, and took the second set 6-3. The deciding third set turned into an absolute physical and emotional war, a baseline battle of attrition that stretched past the 2.5-hour mark. Serving in the final game of the match, Eala found herself down and facing 3 separate break points. One missed first serve, one loose error, and the match would have slipped away. In that exact moment of supreme vulnerability, Eala played flawless, fearless tennis. She saved all 3 break points with spectacular winners, held her nerve, and closed out the final set 7-5. After 2 hours and 37 minutes of pure drama, the curse was officially broken. On her biggest stage of the season, against her most historically terrifying matchup, she conquered her demons. But here is the unbelievable twist that absolutely nobody is talking about the piece of the puzzle that even the most hardcore tennis fans miss entirely. Nikola Bardunkova was not just Eala's fierce rival in that dramatic Birmingham singles final. She was also her prearranged doubles partner for the entire grass court season, including the main draw of Wimbledon. To appreciate how surreal this dynamic is, you have to understand the deeply isolated, hyper-competitive nature of the professional tennis tour. This is not a team sport where individual grievances are washed away by a shared franchise jersey. This is a lonely, individualistic corporate ladder where your peers are directly taking money out of your pockets and food off your table. Players are notoriously protective of their personal space, their strategic secrets, and their emotional energy. Eala and Bardunkova had signed up to play doubles together in Birmingham before the singles tournament even commenced. They took the court as a team, suffered a disappointing first-round exit in the doubles draw, and then, through the unpredictable nature of sports, spent the next several days systematically destroying the rest of the singles field until they found themselves standing on opposite sides of the net for the championship trophy. Imagine the raw emotional complexity of that situation. You engage in a brutal, exhausting 2-hour and 37-minute war against someone. You scream. You fight for every inch of grass. You break a multi-year national curse against their country, and you ultimately deny them a career-defining championship trophy, celebrating wildly in front of a packed stadium while they are forced to stand there and watch you lift the silverware. In 99% of professional tennis relationships, that sequence of events creates an immediate, icy wall of tension. It becomes deeply awkward. Eye contact is avoided in the locker room. Text messages are left on read, and representatives are quietly instructed to find a new doubles partner for the next tournament to avoid any emotional spillover. Yet, when the official Wimbledon doubles entry lists were published, their names were side by side, Alex Eala and Nikola Bardunkova. They looked at the emotional fallout of their singles war, looked at each other, and consciously chose to honor their alliance. They decided that the mutual respect they had forged as partners was vastly more important than the competitive scars they had inflicted on each other as singles opponents. This decision tells us everything we need to know about the rare psychological maturity of Alex Eala. She does not look at an opponent and see an enemy. She sees a mirror. She does not carry the toxic, lingering bitterness of past battles into her future engagements. She processes the match, extracts the lessons, and immediately locks her focus onto the next ball. To turn your fiercest singles rival into your primary doubles confidant at the most prestigious tournament on earth requires an extraordinary level of emotional intelligence. On the grand lawns of SW19, the very woman who tried with everything she had to deny Alex her crowning moment in Birmingham is now the exact ally tasked with helping her conquer the doubles draw. That is a beautiful cinematic narrative that completely transcends standard sporting tropes. As if the physical exhaustion, the structural pressure of the seeding, and the complex psychological doubles dynamics weren't enough, Alex Eala had to navigate all of this while walking directly into a massive media hurricane. The biggest headline at Wimbledon has undoubtedly been the shocking, cinematic return of the greatest icon in the history of women's sports, Serena Williams. At 44 years of age, possessing 23 Grand Slam singles titles and 7 Wimbledon crowns, Serena Williams accepted a wild-card invitation to return to the historic lawns where she built her unmatched legacy, ending a 4-year hiatus from singles competition. The moment her participation was confirmed, the global sports media apparatus went into an absolute frenzy. Every camera at the All England Club was tracked onto her practice sessions. Every headline was dedicated to analyzing her physical condition, and an intense, palpable wave of anxiety swept through the locker room. Unseeded players across the draw were openly praying to the tennis gods that they would not draw the legendary American in the opening round, knowing that facing Serena on center court is the most intimidating psychological test in sports. But while the rest of the tennis world was losing its collective mind over Serena's return, Alex Eala remained completely unbothered. Why? Because she had earned her seed. While the unseeded field was trembling at the thought of a first-round nightmare against a returning legend, Eala's number 29 ranking guaranteed that she could not cross paths with Serena or any other titan of the sport during the volatile opening matches of the tournament. The stark contrast between these two athletes is mesmerizing. On one hand, you have Serena Williams, the ultimate titan of the past, returning at 44 to chase one final poetic moment of glory in the house she owns. On the other hand, you have Alex Eala, the 21-year-old vanguard of the future, carrying the untapped tennis dreams of 110 million people on her heavily taped shoulders. Serena is fighting to extend a legacy that is already written in gold. Alex is fighting to author a historic chapter that her region has been denied for nearly 2 decades. The media lights are blindingly bright on Serena, but the quiet, intense fire burning in Eala's eyes proves that she is not here to be a spectator in someone else's comeback documentary. She is here to build her own kingdom. To truly appreciate what happens every time Alex Eala walks onto a tennis court, you have to look far beyond the baseline statistics, the technical accuracy of her left-handed forehand, or the financial realities of the WTA Tour. You have to look at the global pulse of the Filipino people. The sport of tennis has historically been viewed in the Philippines as an elite, inaccessible, Western-centric discipline, a sport played on pristine country club surfaces far removed from the everyday realities of ordinary citizens. For generations, the collective sporting passion of the nation was anchored almost exclusively to the basketball courts of Manila or the boxing rings of General Santos City. Alex Eala has single-handedly demolished that cultural barrier. She has taken a global, exclusionary sport and made it profoundly meaningful to an entire population. Every time she competes, the global Filipino diaspora wakes up. We're talking about nursing staffs working the grueling graveyard shifts in London hospitals, checking live scores between patient rounds. We are talking about overseas workers in Riyadh kitchens pausing their duties to watch a pixelated live stream on a mobile phone. We are talking about family group chats from California to Manila exploding in celebration over a single break point. People who have never held a tennis racket in their lives. People who do not fully comprehend the complex score mechanics of a deuce or an advantage are suddenly completely emotionally invested in her journey. They watch her because she represents their shared values on the global stage. They see her with that heavily taped arm, enduring 12 matches in 22 days, refusing to quit when her legs are burning, and they recognize that exact brand of relentless, unyielding resilience that defines the global Filipino identity. She has converted an individual sport into a collective national movement. When she stands on the historic manicured grass of Wimbledon, she isn't just striking a yellow felt ball. She is carrying the dignity, the hopes, and the historic validation of a nation that has waited a lifetime to see one of their own treated as royalty at the All-England Club. The opening chapters of Wimbledon are officially underway, and the entire tennis world is starting to realize that the young woman from the Philippines is not a narrative that can be ignored. She arrived at the most exclusive tournament on earth bruised, heavily taped, physically exhausted, and written off by the global punditry. Yet, she walked through those gates with the quiet, devastating confidence of a competitor who knows she has paid the ultimate price to earn her position. The critics saw her physical exhaustion as a catastrophic vulnerability, completely failing to realize that her grueling marathon was the exact vehicle that unlocked historic protection, structural rest, and a 17-year regional breakthrough. She broke a psychological curse that had haunted her career, transformed her fiercest championship rival into her primary doubles ally, and insulated herself from the chaotic media storm surrounding the return of legends. Alexandra Eala's first day at Wimbledon did not just leave the tennis world in shock because of her physical condition. It shocked them because it revealed an athlete whose competitive ambition completely refuses to wait for a more convenient moment. Her body may be tired, her hitting arm may be bound in tape, but her spirit is completely unbroken. The historical groundwork is fully laid, the structural advantages are secured, and the global audience is completely locked in. Before we look forward to the dramatic matches ahead, I want to hear directly from you. Step away from the analytical commentary for a moment and give me your honest, unvarnished projections. What specific round does Alex Eala reach in this historic Wimbledon singles draw? Are we looking at a profound quarterfinal breakthrough, an emotional semifinal run, or does she possess the explosive potential to go even further on her favorite surface? Drop your exact predictions in the comments section right now. Be completely specific with your answers, because as this tournament unfolds and history continues to be written on the grass, I want to look back at this exact comment section and see who possessed a vision to believe in her greatness first. The long-awaited chapter isn't winding down. The grandest story in the history of Southeast Asian tennis is just getting started.